GPS, internet, and weather apps all rely on satellites. But most people don't realize how complicated Earth's orbit has become, or why that matters to everyday life. Most people think space problems only affect people like astronauts, but the real impact shows up much closer to home. Hello, I'm Dr. Amanda Fetch, also known as Dr. Amanda Analytics. I work in AI and space situational awareness, which is about understanding what's happening in Earth's orbit so that we can keep space-based systems working safely and reliably. Today, I want to share a quick snapshot of what Earth's orbital environment currently looks like and why it matters, even if you never think about space. The visuals that I'm going to show come from orbit.ing-now.com, which is an open educational site that visualizes public two-line element, or TLE data. For my actual research, including my PhD work, I used, for example, the spacetrack.org dataset, which is also an authoritative catalog run by the U.S. Space Force along with SAIC. SpaceTrack tracks tens of thousands of objects, give or take about 60,000 plus objects, and is designed for full orbital custody and safety analysis. Sites like orbit.ing-now don't replace that. They take published TLE data and present a filtered visual snapshot that makes it easier to explore and explain what's happening in orbit. So if you want a deeper walkthrough of how this site works, I linked my earlier SSA video into the description of this video. One thing that often surprises people is that different tools show very different pictures of Earth's orbit. That's because they're built for different purposes. Spacetrack.org, for example, is focused on comprehensive tracking and custody, detecting and maintaining awareness of as many objects as possible. Orbit.ing-now is focused on clarity and interpretability, showing objects with stable, publishable orbital data that can be reliably visualized and categorized. So this view is not necessarily the full catalog. It's one lens of the data, designed to help us understand patterns and structure, not to necessarily show everything that's existing. That difference isn't necessarily a flaw to us in our analysis, but what it's doing is it's reflecting how complex SSA really is. So when I last looked at this same view in late April to early May of this year, which is 2025, it showed about 12,351 tracked objects. As of today, which is December 17th, 2025, this view now shows 14,932 tracked objects. That's an increase of more than 2,500 objects in about 7 months. And that's using the same site and the same filters. Now, one thing to note is these objects are grouped by orbital region. So we have low Earth orbit, where most satellites and debris are, medium Earth orbit, commonly used for navigation systems like your GPS, geostationary orbit, where satellites stay fixed relative to Earth, and highly elliptical or graveyard orbits, usually tied to end-of-life spacecraft, for example. And so these categories describe where objects are, not whether they're still operational necessarily. So by default, if you look onto this website and pull a view, the view that's going to come back for you shows the active tracking catalog. Now, if we switch and click on this site to the inactive TLE view, you're going to see a subset of objects that are no longer operational, but are still tracked because they're still moving. In space situational awareness, inactive doesn't mean that it's gone. Those objects still have to be monitored because motion, not necessarily the intent, is what's creating the risk in this case. So even if you think, well, I should say, even if you never think about space, this still matters. Satellites are what keep GPS working, help route internet and streaming traffic, support weather forecasting, enable aviation, emergency communications, and many, many other things. Every object in orbit, active or inactive, is something operators have to watch and avoid to keep those systems reliable. As orbit starts to get more crowded and harder to manage, maintaining those everyday services become more challenging. And so this affects more than typical space applications. Now we're looking at infrastructure and an infrastructure problem. And so this snapshot that I've provided and shown today shows how dynamic Earth orbit really is and why understanding it matters beyond space missions. So if you want to dig into that original SSA walkthrough I provided, the video is linked below in the description. I'll keep sharing updates like this one and dig deeper into specific topics in future videos. But before you go, I have a discussion question I'd love to hear your thoughts on. As Earth's orbit keeps getting more complex, I should say, what do you think matters more? Is it tracking every single object, Or is it getting better at prioritizing risk from the most critical objects? Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Take care.